What's up, guys? Hope everyone's doing good, enjoying some Super Bowl football. You know, that just wrapped up with NBA All-Star Week around the corner. But today, I wanted to take the time to focus on America's team, the Dallas Cowboys. You know, just who would have guessed that another year would see the Cowboys losing the playoffs in gut-wrenching fashion on account of poor quarterback play and worse time management from the head coach, you know? Probably everyone, right? But why is that? Well, today we're going to be looking at the Cowboys' 27-year Super Bowl, scratch that, NFC Championship drought to find, the answer. So we're going to be examining this nearly 3-decade drought to find out how it began, how it was sustained, and what it would take the Dallas natives to rid themselves of this near curse afflicting their franchise. All right, let's go ahead and dive into this one. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I know it's been a minute since I made a video, but we're back. We're back with the cameras. We're back with different topics, going out of sports, doing a lot of cool things. But forget all that. Let's dive into the video. So, since we will be going back a whole 27 years, you may be wondering what uses context. Since, the whole purpose of the video is in essence to provide context. However, I do feel like some info would aid you guys in understanding the cliff the Cowboys were on, because they were high up, they were America's team, and how much they've truly fallen from that grace. I feel like if we do that, in doing so, you may begin to understand why their fans suffer so much denial year after year. However, after 27 years of coming short, it's fair to question how much of a winning tradition you guys truly have. Anyways, life was completely, and I mean completely different in Dallas, Texas if you go back to their 1970s run. You'll see 5 Super Bowl appearances along with 2 victories led by Roger Staubach and their head coach Tom Landry. Furthermore, the Cowboys won a total of 105 regular season games within the 70s, a better rate than any other franchise. If you jump to the 90s, probably what most Cowboy fans would recognize as the prime of their team, you'll see the Cowboys' 3 Super Bowl victories in 4 tries, which came under new owner Jerry Jones and head coach Jimmy Johnson, who was later controversially replaced by Barry Switzer. This was also the time of greats like Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, Larry Allen, even guys like Charles Haley, who's a Hall of Famer. These guys are all Hall of Famers, plus even more great talented rosters. In the 90s, the Cowboys actually broke the record for most players sent to the Pro Bowl with 11. They also became the first team to feature both the league leaders in rushing yards with Emmitt Smith and receiving yards with Michael Irvin. And they had the 2 first NFL coaches to win a championship in the NCAA and then go to the league and win the Super Bowl. And of course, that's with Jimmy Johnson and Barry Switzer. However, this is when the Jerry Jones type Showtime aesthetic would first prove detrimental for the Dallas Cowboys, but we'll save the bulk of that for its own, dedicated section. For the most part, the important takeaway to set the stage for this 27-year nightmare is that since the Cowboys' inaugural year in 1960, they've had 9 Super Bowl appearances, 14 NFC Championship appearances, a total record of 318, 206, and 6. The Jerry Jones-led Cowboys were prolific winners to heights often unseen in the NFL, along with great franchises like the Steelers, Raiders, 49ers, and so forth. However, a cliff-sized drop-off was waiting around the corner for the team that donned the star on the side of their helmet, and absolutely no one in the Dallas area was prepared for what was about to come. Right off the heels of the franchise's 5th Super Bowl victory, fully realized thanks to a big free agent splash addition of the great Neon Deion Sanders, the Cowboys would find themselves suffering from both self-inflicted wounds and plaguing injuries to knock them off of their rightful NFC throne. Beginning with the wide receiver core, Irvin would have a run-in with the law leading to a possession of narcotics charge that would find him sidelined in the first 5 games of the 1996 season. Additionally, their secondary receiving option tight end Jay Novacek suffered an off-season back injury that would go on to end his career. Emmitt Smith also found himself out a number of games due to being stretchered off during the matchup with the Bears that same season. Even then, all hope was not lost in Texas, as the hobbled Cowboys still managed to secure the NFC East title with a 10-6 record. Hype began to mount as they manhandled the Vikings in a 40-15 rout. However, reality would begin to set in as their playoff run came to an end against a young competitive Panthers team after losing both Irvin and Dion in the bout. However, the unsettling part about this loss for Dallas faithful was this would be the last playoff victory the squad would earn until the 2009 season, which, if you weren't counting, is about 13 years give or take, for a single playoff win, by the way. Yeah, I literally just did the math. It's popping up 13. I know it's flipped. But okay, so I'm pretty sure it's about 13 years. That's how long it took the Cowboys to win a playoff game. And we're not even talking about championship or Super Bowls, what the Cowboys were known for. We're talking about playoff wins. Surprisingly, what the Cowboys went positive in the time span as well. They skimmed the water with a 116 and 108 record. However, with 3-5-11 records, 2-6-10 records, and essentially 8 other years where the team went 500 or better, including the 2007 squad who won 13-3, the team didn't muster one playoff win, which is just astronomical. So you can just begin to imagine the type of suffering those Cowboys fans were going through, and Cowboys fans today think they have it tough. Yet each year, somehow, some way, Jerry Jones brought the expectations up to 1 million, a practice that's followed him into the today. Whether it was signing Rocket Ismail in 1998, hiring Bill Parcells in 2003, or firing him in 2006, acquiring Drew Bledsoe in 2005, or finally being ushered into the Tony Romo era, the Cowboys owner just knew what exact strings to pull to get the conversation swirling around his Cowboys again and again, regardless of their win record or past playoff success. The Tony Romo era is what actually brought the Cowboys back into some form of respectability, but we'll cover that in the next section, so we'll save much of those 2006, 2007 and on teams for them. So bringing it back to this 13-year drought, I touched on it a bit already, but the team went through 5 head coaches in their playoff lull, consisting of the likes of Barry Switzer, Chan Gailey, Dave Campo, Bill Parcells, and finally Wade Phillips, who was hired in the 2007 offseason. The teams over the time span featured the likes of the back end of Troy Aikman's career with 67 games, 83 games of Tony Romo's stint, 32 games of Brad Johnson, 31 from Quincy Carter, and there's more, but the most notable one I think is Jason Garrett himself for 15 games scattered throughout the 90s. Their top 3 pass catchers over the time were Michael Irvin, their so-called savior Rocket Ismail, and Hall of Famer Terrell Owens. Although you could throw Roy Williams was a beast back then, he never really panned out for them. And also when I was doing my research, I found this guy named Terry Glenn. Cowboys diehards may remember that name, but I didn't. But this dude was definitely a stud, so they had some solid talent, but definitely not top of the league stuff if you exclude Terrell Owens, because he's T.O. What are you gonna do? Admittedly, the Tony Romo era did hold some legitimacy in terms of contention, at least with that 2007 13-3 team. As we know though, that wasn't quite the case. You know what, before we spoil too much, let's just go ahead and dive into that next section. To truly understand how the Cowboys found themselves within the hype train that was Tony Romo, we'll have to go back to even before his first season started. Instead, this hype train began with the hiring of coaching legend Bill Parcells in 2003. Again, owner Jerry Jones tried his damnedest to rally the troops behind another attempt to revive the Cowboys' so-called winning tradition with the hire, and it worked, until it didn't. After posting a 10-6 record in the 2003 regular season, Dallas would go on to lose to the eventual NFC Conference champion Carolina Panthers in a 29-10 bout. That's also about as far as Parcells would take them as head coach. As next year, the Cowboys opted to release former starting quarterback Quincy Carter in light of signing 40-year-old free agent veteran quarterback Vinny Testaverde. As you could expect, things only went downhill from here, as the Cowboys finished the 2004 season with a 6-10 record, a 4-game fall from their previous season. However, 2005 is when the team really started to gain momentum once again, this time behind a new philosophy from good old Jerry Jones to focus less on the big splash free agents and instead prioritize resources around building the team through the draft. In doing so, the Cowboys added future Hall of Famer DeMarcus Ware and also guys like Marcus Spears, Kevin Burnett, and Chris Canty through the draft in order to bolster their defense. Additionally, the team decided to make another change at the quarterback position, this time in favor of free agent Drew Bledsoe. While the new quarterback in town was able to provide some amount of stability to the league's most unpredictable franchise, Jerry still dipped his toes in the free agency market for old time's sake as they signed defensive tackle Jason Ferguson and cornerback Anthony Henry. This was all in an effort to provide one final push with Parcells at the helm of the franchise to see if this team would ever be up to par during his tenure. And even with a somewhat impressive finish of 9-7, it still wasn't enough to advance them past the third place slot in the NFC East, effectively eliminating the Cowboys from playoff contention. Which brings us to Tony Romo. Let me explain. After a mediocre 3-2 start to the 2006 season and a gigantic free agent signing of wide receiver great Terrell Owens, the Cowboys decided to bring in a young Tony Romo into the ballgame to replace the struggling Drew Bledsoe. While Romo did provide some sparks to the offense, the Cowboys still fell to the NFC East rival and favored to win the division, the New York Giants, in a 36-22 defeat. However, Romo began sparking some dialogue around the league and his fans as they began to collect impressive wins from solid teams like the Panthers, Cardinals, an undefeated Colts squad led by Peyton Manning, as well as Tampa Bay on Thanksgiving. By the time the Cowboys rematched the Giants, they had a 2-game lead over the G-Men in the division and would go on to defeat the former favorites. This is when things get probably the most interesting in the video, specifically one of the lowest lowlights in this 27-year-long drought for the Cowboys. So we're gonna go into a little extra detail here, but just bear with me, I think it'll be worth it. With 4 games to go, the Cowboys were tied for the second best record in the league with the New Orleans Saints, as they each boasted a 8 wins and 4 loss record. They would go on to lose that matchup, continue their skid with a defeat at the hands of the Philadelphia Eagles, a loss to the 2-13 Lions that included 4 fumbles from the new kid on the block, Romo. Even with their atrocious finish, the Cowboys managed to find themselves in a wildcard matchup versus the Seattle Seahawks. This would be the game where the Cowboys' legs would collapse beneath them before they even got a chance to accomplish something substantial. Now that sounds harsh, but when you consider the Cowboys led the Seahawks 20-13 with 6:42 left in the ball game, then subsequently failed to convert a 1-yard touchdown, resulting in a fumble out of the end zone or essentially a safety, awarding the Seahawks 2 points and possession of the ball, you can see where my criticism is coming from. With the ball, quarterback Matt Hasselbeck for the Seahawks led his squad to score and take the 21-20 lead over the Cowboys. The game wasn't over yet though, and the stage was set for a legacy drive in the young career of Tony Romo, which, to give him some credit, led them to a 19-yard field goal opportunity with 1:19 left in the ballgame. The Cowboys' first iteration of the play heard round the world came in form of Romo's blunder of catching and place-holding the snap for the field goal kicker, resulting in a mad scramble by Romo that came just short of the goal line after being tackled down exactly at the 2-yard line. Ball game. And now you may be asking, why was Romo even out there in the first place? But remember, Romo was the backup quarterback to Drew Bledsoe, and he was already used to holding kicks. So when they made that change for him to go, up to starter, they just kept him as the placeholder kicker, and he did great at it. It wasn't an issue until it was, just in Cowboy fashion. So just as soon as the Cowboys hype train got rolling, it was sideswiped and thrown completely off its tracks in the matter of mere moments. As a result, Bill Parcells opted to retire from head coaching, which opened up a new head coach search led by none other than Jerry Jones himself. Heading into the 2007 season, the Cowboys front office and much of the fans/media summed up the past failures as coaching and had high hopes as their ownership decided on hiring San Diego's defensive coordinator Wade Phillips, as well as deciding to bring in free agents offensive lineman Leonard Davis and quarterback Brad Johnson to back up newly established starter Tony Romo. Romo was also awarded with a $67.5 million contract over 6 years, proving how desperate the Cowboys were to even have the relevancy of a playoff spot and how much being liked by Jerry Jones can affect your contract amounts. albeit 2007 would turn out to be their best regular season run since their championship teams in the 90s, as they cruised to a 13-3 record behind a record-shattering year from Terrell Owens. I mean, this dude was going crazy this year. He went on to have the most productive year of his career and in franchise history. He set franchise records for most scoring receptions in a single game with 4, and most touchdowns in a single season with 15. Additionally, Romo broke his own records such as touchdowns in one season with 36 and passing yards in one season with 4,211. After their prolific season, the Cowboys earned the top seed in the NFC in a first-round bye. Even with impressive wins over Green Bay, Eagles, and the Bills, many were worried about the Cowboys' ability to win against the rival New York Giants in the divisional round, even considering the fact that the Cowboys had defeated them in both matchups they had during the season. However, as we all should know, this was the year of the Giant, as the G-Men would not only go on to defeat the Cowboys in the divisional round, but they would go on to beat the undefeated Patriots in the Super Bowl as well, of course. Another year, another playoff defeat for the blue and silver. You know, you can call it coaching, call it the players, the front office, whatever you want. Unfortunately for Dallas, there wasn't much to change in the years to come, and this would be a reoccurring issue. The next year, the 2008 NFL season, saw the Cowboys miss the playoffs for the first time with Romo as a starter. They released Terrell Owens after a dip in production and a contract extension, weirdly enough. And they also opted to trade a first, third, and sixth round pick for wide receiver beast Roy Williams. Although, like I said earlier, he never really ended up panning out for them. But on the bad side of things, they saw their safety, Pac-Man Jones, suspended for a year for an altercation he had with a bodyguard. So, you know, just some good old Cowboys drama for you as well for this year. But all in all, they missed the playoffs, so not really a notable season at all. The 2009 held a lot of excitement for the Cowboys as it acted as the first year the Cowboys would compete in the all-new state-of-the-art AT&T Stadium, which just so happened to cost over $1 billion to own and operate. Admittedly, hopes were low in Cowboy circles as it seemed like their playoff hopes would continue to dwindle after their Game 1 loss to the Giants. However, the Cowboys would actually surge to a 6-2 record, impressing themselves and the rest of the league alike. However, as December neared, many fans and media members began ruminating on the idea of a December curse the Cowboys were stuck in year after year. Although, after a victory against the 13-0 New Orleans Saints, followed by shutting out their division rival Washington, the Cowboy faithful had found themselves once again on the Jerry Jones-led hype train. Even as they entered January, the Cowboys easily handled out the rolling hot Eagles, who had won their last 5 games in a 24-0 blowout. And for the first time in history, the Cowboys earned their first playoff victory with Tony Romo as their starting quarterback, thanks to a poor performance from Philadelphia's defense, resulting in a 34-17 final score. Just as things began to look up for the blue and silver once more, everything came crashing down as Brett Favre and the Vikings swiftly defeated Dallas behind a 4-touchdown to 1 field goal scoring difference. Just to rub dirt in the Cowboys' gashing metaphorical wound, the Vikings scored a late go-ahead touchdown that, as Cowboys linebacker Keith Brooking put it, quote, served no purpose other than to run up the score in the game the Vikings had already won. Ouch. You can try to put blame on coaching for this one, but Romo's 3 fumbles with 2 lost and an interception definitely served as the nail in the Cowboys' proverbial coffin. It's hard to say if you put the blame on Romo for his mistakes or Jerry's commitment to an undrafted free agent quarterback, but regardless, the Cowboys' drought continued, although at least not for playoff wins anymore. Even after the high of making the playoffs, the Cowboys returned to their below average level seen in recent seasons as they finished with a 6-10 record. Much of this can be chalked up to Tony Romo shattering his collarbone when playing the familiar rivals New York Giants on Monday Night Football, and backup John Kidna just did not provide that same backup quarterback spark that Romo once did, leading to the team's disappointing finish down the line. This also led to the firing of head coach Wade Phillips, as Cowboys brass essentially lost faith in Phillips' ability to keep the team competitive without an already competitive quarterback. The defense was especially bad, which was even worse considering that's what Phillips' specialty was. I read up on old articles written about the firing, and what stood out especially is the fact that they allowed 1,299 yards and 121 points over the last 12 quarters of his career, which is just about 108 yards and 10 points per quarter. Yeah, not that great. In fact, Jerry even used the words "in denial," speaking about why he didn't fire Phillips sooner. It became apparent that he had major weaknesses as a head coach, and when his only strength began to wane, it was time to move on. They moved to instill Jason Garrett, serving the team as offensive coordinator beforehand, who went on to go 5-3 as an interim head coach in the final 8 games of the season. Now, 2011 is when Jerry Jones once again found a way to reignite that hype train. First act of hype train related business consisted of the just mentioned hiring of Jason Garrett as their permanent head coach after an impressive run as interim. Next, with Tony Romo back in action, much of the fans and media believed the Cowboys were poised to make a run for the playoffs akin to their 13-3 2007 season. Even with a punctured lung, broken ribs, and a first game loss to the New York Jets, hopes remained high for Romo to be able to heal up and help Dallas compete for a championship. After going 1-3 the month of October, they quickly turned things around by going undefeated in November. With wins over the Bills, Washington, the 49ers, and more, the Cowboys faithful truly believed that this team had a real chance of competing for a title this very year. However, on the precipice of the December curse, the Cowboys experienced a late season skid consisting of the losses to the Cardinals, Bucks, and future champion New York Giants. They went on to finish the 2011 regular season with an 8-8 record, effectively missing the playoffs for their second straight season. There were rising, noticeable narratives from media accompanied by staunch criticism around fans that mainly surrounded two things: the incompatibility of head coach Jason Garrett and defensive coordinator Rob Ryan, and the fact that Jerry Jones just might be far and away the worst owner in all of football, maybe all of professional sports. Don't take it from me. Take it from the Dallas Observer's Jonathan Bales as he writes about the inadequacies of both Garrett and Ryan's coaching styles, or recount the Fire Jerry Jones hashtag that was trending in Dallas nearly every Sunday during the fall and winter of 2011. It was evident that people were fed up with the shortcomings of the league's most valuable franchise. But the important thing is, at this point, nearly all blame had shifted off the players and onto the front office and coaching, which was a really intriguing position for a team to be in. When there's no accountability for the individual players and the overall team thanks to a built-in excuse via owner and coaches, compounded with the egregiously high expectations placed on the team thanks to the ownership, I wonder what it could lead to. Oh, that's right, a cycle of misery, denial, and acceptance. I feel like this quote from Ben Rogers on ESPN's 103.3 FM show really encompasses the majority of Cowboys fan sentiment at the time. If you were wondering, they do get fooled again. Alright, moving on. Not much would change in the next 2 years, 2012 and 2013, as the Cowboys would go 8-8 in both years, resulting in missing out on the playoffs for the third and fourth consecutive seasons. If you were a Cowboys fan at the time and you were in a coma for those 2 years, you really didn't miss anything. Although they had the opportunity to go to the postseason with a win over their division rival, when they had rookie RG3 and it was week 7, but they just fell short in a 28-18 defeat, just crushing to have that opportunity to go into the playoffs, have that chance to, make a run, and you can't even get it because you can't win that final game. 2012 was actually more important in a bad way for the Cowboys offseason rather than the regular season, because right when the free agency period opened up, the Cowboys signed Brandon Carr to a 5-year, $50 million deal and then traded the 14th pick for the 6th pick to select Morris Claiborne. Now, both of these guys were defensive backs. The Cowboys really wanted to bolster their back end of their defense, but unfortunately for the Cowboys, these commitments didn't pan out in either regard and effectively erased all interest to make free agency and other draft capital transactions as far as Jerry Jones was concerned. Regardless, 2013 actually served as a pretty exciting year for the Cowboys, with a bunch of playoff hopes and dreams. They had some impressive wins and surprisingly more impressive losses this year, including a 51-48 loss to the Denver Broncos, and a 31-30 loss to the Megatron-led Lions, and narrowly losing to the Packers again by 1 point, 37-36. which just so happened to spring forward the December curse conversations to the forefront of all Cowboy discussions. Again, the Cowboys had a chance to get into the postseason with just one win over their division rival Philadelphia Eagles. But with Romo out and Kyle Orton, starting, he tried his best to lead the Cowboys to a playoff berth, but being down 24-22 with just minutes left, he threw the game-clinching interception, unfortunately losing the game, thus missing the playoffs for the fourth straight year in a row. One positive to the 2013 season, being so gun-shy from the Claiborne and Carr deals the year before that they traded down from 18 to 21 in the first round and selected all-time Cowboy great center Travis Frederick. I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. He might even already be in the Hall of Fame. I'm not even sure. So at least there's that. Jerry Jones once again refocused Cowboy fans and media to the goal of winning in the 2014 regular season. Behind an increasingly impressive offensive line featuring Tyron Smith, center Travis Frederick, and guard Zach Martin. Cowboys' hopes lied in the effectiveness of the run game led by Oklahoma legend DeMarco Murray. With his new team development, Romo was able to go through his routine struggles and/or left room for possibilities if his back were to keep him out of games again, which did end up happening in Week 8. Things were trending upwards after the first two games as Murray recorded 285 rushing yards, on pace for 2,280 yards when projected out over a complete season. It was rumored that Romo had some abrasiveness to the new Cowboys philosophy, even manifesting in him calling audibles at the line of scrimmage out of run plays, which notably held them back during their opening matchup versus the 49ers in 2014. Even so, as the year progressed, Garrett assured his team, media, and fans that Romo was, quote, on board with the new team philosophy. Regardless, the Dallas squad was 10-3 when heading into their biggest rival. No, not a team, but the month of December. But instead of their routine collapse, the Cowboys flipped the script and went 4-0 in the month, specifically with wins over the Eagles, Washington football team, the Colts, and the Washington team again to finish the season 12-4 and the number 3 seed in the NFC, with their most notable achievement being their undefeated road record during the 2014 season. Back to the wildcard round Dallas went, this time facing the bright-eyed Lions team, whose fans were as hungry for playoff success as the team who donned the star symbol. After falling down to a quick 14-0 deficit in Jerry's world, things started to shift in Cowboys' favor after a 76-yard touchdown bomb from Romo to Terrence Williams. The Cowboys continued to whittle the lead down until Romo finally put his team in front with another touchdown to Williams, this time from a modest 8 yards. The Lions had an opportunity for a walk-off touchdown, however, Stafford's fumble on their 4th and 3 attempt sealed the game's fate, and Dallas would revisit and win their first playoff game since the 2009 regular season, a 5-year drought. For the next round, the Cowboys would have to face off with their nemesis Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers, in what would be their first playoff matchup since the Ice Bowl. This was a clash of titans during the 2014 season, with the Packers going 8-0 at home and the Cowboys going 8-0 on the road, and the game just so happened to be in Lambeau. Head coach Mike McCarthy, funnily enough, was at the helm of the Packers at this time and found himself at a 10-14 deficit after the first half. However, the Packers would take on the lead in the third to make the score 26-21. Once again, the Cowboys had their fates in their own hands as they had one last drive to put this game away. But as a Packers fan, watching Dez high point that ball on the 4th and 3 bomb literally made my heart sink. But, as we all know, the refs considered the way that Dez bobbled the catch upon, landing with the ball to be illegal and thus not a catch, essentially ending the Cowboys season. Another year, another disappointment, and another NFC championship whiff. Not even sure the city of Dallas had the Super Bowl in their vocabulary anymore. Immediately after the game, head coach Jason Garrett, what do you think happened to him? Maybe he had a talking to, had a rough conversation with Jerry Jones. I don't know. Put your guesses in. No, he signed a 5-year extension with the team to remain the head coach of the Cowboys. Transitioning into 2015 now, expectations were in some weird middle ground of helplessness, curses, and sky-high expectation thrusted on the Cowboys because of their owner. Dallas had the talent, the experience, and the narrative, but for whatever reason, they just could not get over the hump of the big game. This year was going to be different, said every Cowboys fan, and for the first game comeback against the Giants, things seemed to be moving in the right direction. However, Romo's shoulder would become a major blockade once again as it sidelined him in their Week 2 matchup versus the Eagles and kept him out until Week 11, where the Cowboys would go 2-7 in those games. One game after coming back and beating the Miami Dolphins, Romo injured the same shoulder and was ruled out the rest of the season. The Cowboys season was all but over after that, and they finished with a 4-12 record to make for a last place finish in the NFC East. The writing was on the wall. The Cowboys could not win as currently constructed, most importantly with Romo's exponentially declining health. For the coming year, major changes were needed, and Jerry's newish focus around drafting new talent would skyrocket in importance during this offseason. After another disappointing finish, Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys decided it was time to revamp their offense and defense in order to finally contend for a Super Bowl. This era really starts in the 2016 NFL Draft, specifically in the draft selections of Ezekiel Elliott out of Ohio State in the first round, and then Dak Prescott in the third from his alma mater, Mississippi State. Drafting had become progressively a bigger priority for Jerry and the Cowboys front office, highlighted by their 2014 picks of DeMarcus Lawrence and Zach Martin, Travis Frederick in 2013, and that would also progress into the future picks like Leighton Vander Esch and Michael Gallup in 2018, Tony Pollard in 2019, CeeDee Lamb and Trevon Diggs in 2020, including, of course, Micah Parsons in 2021. That's not necessarily where the faults lie in this era. Instead, I'd like to point to three main reasons as to why this new era in Dallas hasn't worked out, for better or for worse. 1, I would call this contract decisions. 2, coaching mistakes. 3, unclutched play. And 4, what this all culminates in with the Cowboys, an owner masquerading as scout team, GM, doctor, and more all in one, effectively handicapping the Cowboys more than untimely injuries ever could. Let's go through these problems with how the era progressed chronologically, although it feels redundant to go back over 2016. It was a great year from both Dak and Zeke as well as the overall Cowboy team that just ended at the hands of some Aaron Rodgers magic. No real shame in that because they were so young. However, a close playoff defeat by a mere 3 points sticks in the craw of any loyal NFL team, and help wasn't really coming on that front. The biggest story for the Cowboys in 2017 had much to do with Ezekiel Elliott's suspension and legal troubles, unfortunately. The initial reaction upon Jerry Jones and the Cowboys representatives involved refuting all claims and a total condemnation of the NFL for the ruling. Although the part where they forgot to focus on their actual football, like the 6 games they were not going to have Zeke with an already struggling ground attack, which was exposing Dak's faults more and more with each passing game. Oh yeah, you should probably focus on that one. Well, being 5-3 when the suspension took place quickly turned into 8-6. Not entirely out, but in a winner-go-home predicament for every game until the postseason. And with the loss to the Seattle Seahawks on December 24th, or Christmas Eve of course, the Cowboys were officially eliminated. We're attributing this one to faulty ownership and coaching really more than anything. The 2017 team was really just never really prepared to play in the games they absolutely needed to, or be able to win the games they absolutely needed to. You can look at their 35-31 loss to the Packers in Jerry's world for a good example of what I just said.
You have to say all the right things, but you lose Witten, lose Des Bryant. Why, if I'm a Cowboy fan, do I look at the Cowboys wide receiving core and say, there's nothing to worry about here?
Yeah, I mean, we have players. We have veteran players that we brought in that you go watch Allen Hurns, you go watch Tavon Austin, Deontay Thompson, those veterans that we brought in there, along with Cole Beasley, guys that have already made a name for themselves that are hard to guard in the NFL. And then we have some young guys that are on come up. I mean, you don't make the moves that we made without knowing you've got some special receivers and some special players.
Heading into the next season, not only were expectations to make the playoffs, but Super Bowl contention was of course brought to the table by none other than Jerry. The front office's next big idea was a changing of guard of sorts, with an era change within an era, if you will. I mean, they moved on from wide receiver Dez Bryant, tight end Jason Witten, and kicker Dan Bailey, who had all been on the roster since 2010. Thankfully, after a draft class blunder in 2017, they would finally be able to replace some key positions with the picks they made in this draft, specifically in Gallup, like we mentioned earlier, and first round pick Leighton Vander Esch, among others. Jerry's actually most impressive transaction came in this year as well, after a rough 3-5 start, when Dallas opted to trade their first round pick in 2019 to the Raiders for wide receiver Amari Cooper. This midseason addition really did put some wind under the sails of the Cowboys, as they flipped the December curse on its head, winning 7 of their final 8 games to clinch a wildcard spot in the postseason. After narrowly escaping the Seahawks game with a 24-22 victory, the Cowboys were now heading to LA to face the Rams in the then Coliseum. Unfortunately for them, the Rams were in the Super Bowl that year, albeit losing to Brady, so that means their Super Bowl aspirations ended short another year. 23 years since their last Super Bowl and NFC Championship appearance? Ouch, and getting worse by the day. While you could likely point to many faults on the side of the Cowboys here, the most glaring part of this is the fact that this game single-handedly lost Jason Garrett his job, even in a winning postseason making season. Alright, I'm maybe exaggerating a little bit, but with the then brand new Sean McVay on the other sideline, the difference was striking, let's just say that. The real reason why Garrett was moved after a successful season like 2018 was his lack of creativity on the offensive side of the ball. Too often, first and second down for Dallas were pre-marked as a run up the gut, reminiscent of the Cowboys today actually. Additionally, Garrett was incredibly conservative in clutch decisions, often opting for a field goal instead of a crucial 4th down, or punting in the 4th quarter when down score, things like that. So this season can pretty much be attributed to one Jason Garrett, which is the last time we'll be able to say that, so we should soak it in.
Clearly, Jerry has an affinity. He likes Jason Garrett.
Right. We all do. Yeah.
Everybody likes Jason Garrett.
Right.
You think he's coaching next year for this Cowboy team?
I don't think so. I think even if they win the division and even if they're in the playoffs, I don't see them winning the playoff game.
Okay.
And I think the negativity, in Dallas and around the Cowboys right now, it would be miserable if he continued to be the head coach.
It was a tough loss today for the Cowboys, and you didn't have to walk far to ask fans how they felt about it. Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Jason Garrett, to fire or not to fire?
Yeah, I believe Jason Garrett's got to go.
If you were wondering why I didn't include the 2019 season in Garrett's tenure, I legit completely forgot about it because of how mediocre the Cowboys actually were that season. But this season is incredibly important for one thing. One blunder that would doom the Cowboys for the next 4 years, give or take, and that was rewarding Zeke's holdout with a record-breaking 6-year, $90 million extension. Now, I get hindsight's 20/20 or 50/50, however the saying is, but regardless, giving this deal with the draft capital you already spent at the running back position with Tony Pollard, knowing that you have to pay your quarterback, he's someone you want to make your franchise quarterback, you haven't even paid him yet, you drafted him the same year as you drafted Zeke. And also considering the average shelf life of someone that plays the running back position, it was an abhorrently bad deal, and it should have never been done. 2019 seemed to play right in line with Garrett's era's pattern, when one year disappoint the next, this year being the latter. Many believe the dismissal of Garrett came seasons too late because of Jones' affinity for the once esteemed offensive guru. That sounds familiar, the same thing he said about Wade Phillips. However, better late than never. The Cowboys were finally poised to select someone that aligns with the Jimmy Johnson archetype, someone who can reshape a culture, motivate his players, and know the game of football front and back, and is in the prime of his coaching capabilities. Instead of hiring a bunch of Barry Switzer types, coaches that will let Jerry Jones have whatever influence over media, coaching decisions, and front office choices, that gets by more on his ability to be Jerry's friend rather than his ability to coach. So, who does he go to? With a coaching pool with names like Lincoln Riley, Josh McDaniels, Gary Kubiak, Marvin Lewis, and that's without mentioning the multitude of offensive geniuses who would be named as head coach in the years to come, like Mike LaFleur, Zach Taylor, Mike McDaniel, and more. The the Cowboys opted for their once and former rival Packers head coach Mike McCarthy. Even now, it's so deflating to say, but even after watching him for the past 3 years, this decision still sticks out like a sore thumb. From this point forward, coaching miscues and a lack of urgency in the free agency market would cause the vast majority of the Cowboys' blunders. The first year with McCarthy, otherwise known as NFL's COVID year, was rocky to say the least after, a 1-3 start, with their only victory being a 40-39 victory over the Falcons. The Cowboys lost their next 6 of 7 games, and funnily enough, the Cowboys won their final 3 games in December. So, forget the December curse, and it made their record 6-9. Maybe not curse, but definitely not playoff contention. And we all know how 2021 and 2022 can be summarized by an egregious expectation of Super Bowl chances each year, instilled by the owner, nonsensical offseason moves like trading Amari Cooper, and horrible coaching blunders, most often highlighted in their final play of the season, which just so happened to be against the 49ers each time. Whether it was the final play of the most recent playoffs or the horrible time management in both of those playoff games, and in all honesty, in all 3 seasons, has led Dallas to now their 28th year of a NFC championship and Super Bowl drought. What's up, guys? Hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more content from me. If I sound different, it's because this is me during the editing process. I had an outro already recorded for this video, but it was like 15 minutes long, and this is already going to be a super long video. So I decided to just hop in here, do a little short and sweet outro, and then we can call it a vid, and you guys can go on about your day. But yeah, I really appreciate you checking out the video. If you did, if you liked it, if you could like and subscribe. Like I said, that could really help me out a lot. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and are excited for some of the new content I'm going to be coming out. I'm really going to try to be more creative and versatile and all that, but hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to talk about anything in the video, please feel free to leave a comment down below. I would love to hear anybody's thoughts on this, any dialogue we can start. That's always what it's all about. But yeah, guys, this video has been made by Underdog. Peace.